Hey, I feel like welcoming myself back this time. It seems like it's been forever since I was here talking with you guys. I've just come off this 6-week intensive with some fascinating results. Good evolution by a lot of my people that attended. It was a great way, except for the serious heat. We don't have air conditioning in our big studios. Beautiful north light, but no air conditioning. I want to thank David D. You know who you are, David. Your recurring, really appreciated contribution. Ilya F. Thank you, Ilya. Really nice. Benjamin C. and Tyler F. And Benjamin C. again, recurring. Thank you for those guys. I decided to do something, as you can see on the title, to do something by way of a little bit of a tease today. I was told by Mr. Producer, who's in London right now, that that I need to have a short one because I have to send it over the Dropbox it. So I'm going to do my very best to give you a tease about Degas. I had Sasha K say working out plein air drawings into oil sketches might be nice. Was looking at Degas drawings this morning. Glad you found things so funny, and I don't remember which one of the videos you were looking at, Sasha, but I'm afraid I find a lot of things funny. And I had a lot of good humor at the intensive this past week as well. Sometimes I get carried away. It's a thing in my family I got to watch out for. Anyway, let's get back on board. Let's talk about Degas. One of the things I've talked about before, and I almost feel like withdrawing this quote from you, but that is this comment by Paul Valery, the poet. And I've read it to you before. I'm going to read it to you now, and I'm not going to withdraw my sense of things. I believe he actually is saying something that's true, but my perception of what he was saying may have changed. And I'm going to spend time showing you some Degas work that suggests why Degas wasn't blind to certain things that Valery implies here. So let me just read that quickly if I can. As soon as a painter no longer, and mine's a little fuzzy, I don't know if yours is, conceives of color as a local quality active in itself or by contrast with other colors, but as a local effect of all the light reflections in a space shared by all the form it contains. As soon as he attempts to perceive this subtler repercussion and uses it to give his work a certain unity different from that of composition, his conception of form is entirely changed. Followed to the limit, he arrives at Impressionism. And then he says, although Degas well knew this way of seeing and had watched it grow around him, he never surrendered to it the cult of integrity of contour. That's the probity of art concept from Ang, for which his temperament and education had fitted him. But what I perceive the Valery is talking about is this way of seeing that you see the Boston School do. And I'll just give you a version of the one on the bottom right is De Camp. And remember, I'm flying here through this, so don't expect long explanations. But you can see this is painting the light, painting this by the spots, by the light. These guys are always creating atmosphere. All the entire meaning of form and the composition takes on a whole new meaning. Paul Valery is saying that, and it's true. However, I'm celebrating Degas today, and I might even do another video called Degas at the Boston School, because I find these connections real and useful. But one is right here. This is no less a fascinating picture than El Jaleo by Sargent, if you've watched that video. And you can see what he's doing here. He's taken a whole bunch of drawings and he's pieced them all together and created the unity of an Impressionist painting. And I mean, the person may have frozen these people and painted them all in the light of that moment. He's that good. And you don't have to underestimate what the heck that may mean. As I said before, I think of De Camp and us, the Impressionist model, as being considerably more in the journalist camp, where we're just expressing, except that we happen to be expressing beauty, but expressing the beauty of what we see, whereas the guys like the imaginative painters like Degas are actually creating a fictional world, right? But I'm showing you that they understand things. They understand the visual order. I'm just going to walk you through a few more things, but the visual order of the edges, the ideas of lost and found, the ideas of spotting. I don't know if I even showed that image that includes that. There's so many other things that we do. But this guy is very aware of the leading edge of the visual order, the things that we talk about constantly. And he manages to put it together out of his imagination. So I'm giving him credit, but I'm going to show you some other things that he does that are also fascinating. The guy's use of his memory is a big factor in what he does. So it's really something to consider further use of on your own part. So this gives you a little bit of an idea, though, of the sort of approach he might take to painting a figure. Here's all these lines, and then he starts drawing in one section. Very different. The Boston School is all over the place at once, as I've said before. And there again, you see the Degas with this full atmospheric unity from the very beginning. The pursuit of that is the pursuit, not merely of good drawing, meaning of the figure and all that, which is the sort of thing you'd hang on. What is drawing, according to Degas? What happens between the contours? Big contours of a figure. But there's the lost and found world, coming out of a fog approach that you see in Degas. And here again, you see a Degas being pieced together. I don't know to what extent someone actually sat in this room for him and he created that background, but it doesn't look like, even if that were the case, that he approached it like Tarbell does. So that's the thing. I do believe that Valerie's talking about. These guys took on a whole different approach to this, not the outline of objects, not the world of the integrity of the contour of the object. And I'm going to keep reading it that way until I learn differently through my own studies. This whole thing, by the way, looking at pictures is fascinating as can be, and you don't get the same level of fascination if you can't do it, which is one of those things where I wish, I read lately, I've been reading certain things by some critics, and I'm so disappointed that how little you have to say about our form. Most people writing don't even begin to understand anything about it. And it's not even, I'm not saying that to be one of those guys. I'm saying it would be nice if some of you guys would sit down and put 3 years in, study this stuff, and then write about it. 3 years is a little bit of time. It's a very minimal quest. But you can see the hanging on to outlines right throughout this whole thing, making the couch, making this part and that part. Certain parts begin to suggest that he's blobbing in colors much like we might, but typically, and by the way, it doesn't mean these guys never use outlines, but they don't certainly need to. You're seeing masses of paint distributed to produce most of the shape making. Just mentioning that. Also, this has a sense of light, right? A very striking sense of light right from the beginning. Now, this has clearly got light coming in the room, and he's got a silhouette back here and other places that suggest light, but this thing is organized around empowering the light, so much so that Degas would say the subject was light. I actually didn't mean to leave this in, but this is just the very nature of what Valerie was saying people were picking up on. And I don't think anybody does it more beautifully than the Boston School, and that is the research into the visual impression on its own merits and in its own evasive but rich paths, trails that go so far, value movements, light effects, everything just continuously. Now you think of Monet, you think of broken color, and I should have just probably used a Monet here. You think of broken color and light, right? And Degas no slacker on those things. The picture on the left, so this is again the same thing. Degas painting an interior, Degas painting a piano player. This is a violinist, here's a piano player. And Degas has a sense of atmosphere, this pretty striking. Probably it's inevitable that you can't get the same absolute unity of atmosphere, impressionist unity we call it, but he still gets unity. It's a different unity, and let's leave it at that for a minute. What I'm going to talk to you about is these guys, these crazy little figures here, and the way he handles this stuff here. You may as well think of this as Boston School painting. I mean, one of the difficulties of this picture is the way he throws this backlight on, and I find it difficult because it seems to me to make her into a pie face and really wreck what might have been a beautiful form. Now, whether he did it intentionally, I assume he did. I don't know what his reasoning was. I mean, obviously, how could I? So maybe the splash is coming off of the book. It very possibly is. But anyway, there's a backsplash of light in here that's sort of doing some serious damage to the form. Up here, you don't see that problem. And there he is painting. Almost looks like a piece of Max Meldrum, doesn't it? That little bit of work there. I think I have a close-up of that. I'll show you in a minute. But everything you're going to see throughout this whole passage, throughout these paintings, this is a pretty good passage to look at. Is there's section after section after section is very much in the camp of the visual order, the lost and found, and all the rest of it. And I'm just going to walk you through that just for the fun of it. So take this section here. This is probably as beautiful a bit of classical drawing as you're ever going to see. I mean, that is really, really beautiful. In the same class as Michelangelo. I'm sorry, it's Ang's. Whoa, where the heck am I? Reel me in. But here's this. This is at the Gardner Museum, by the way. If you're ever in Boston, you got to look this picture up. This is a powerful, powerful bit of painting in the great classical sense. And right back in the background is this hunk of Boston School painting. Very interesting, considering all the odd flatness and the false, sort of the look of a homemade. Like it looks like he's making up this picture out of whole cloth. You know, nothing really looks like anything or has atmospheric qualities. I can't explain much of the furniture in this thing. On the other hand, when you look at the backside of the still life behind the Ang, look at how that's done. That's a classical approach to painting lost and found areas. Everything is literally there. You go look at this section again, and you're going to see Degas being that other eye, the lost and found. Things aren't lost on Degas at all. He's probably, in my mind, he at least is the premier student of painting, maybe ever. How he chose to use it and what he does with it is interesting. I do like Gamel's comment about him. He's always interesting. Degas is always interesting. So here's a close-up of that. As I said, this could be a little section of a Max Meldrum painting. You know, it's not. It's painted by the spot. It's painted by the effect, et cetera, et cetera. And this piece too. And then you go look at all this, same thing with this area here. Notice how it's now. This appears to be artificial light, oddly, or else it's fairly. I mean, it feels like that. I don't believe that it can be, given the light on the figure. It's just too even. It doesn't look like a candle or something like that, or an oil lamp, but who knows? So this is the close-up of the Ang again. There it is, all the bits of every piece. This is a Boston School. This is de Camp in the back of one of his paintings, to one side of one of his paintings. And where you can see he's painting by the spot, literally by the spot of color. What the French have, the word T-A-C-H-E, I think, it means the same thing. So there's color value spots, and there's the articulation of what happens where they meet other color values, right? That's literally, it's kind of like literally the game, right? It's the game of effects, the game of lost and found, the line, the silhouette, but only in the order in which it appears. It's not the cup. We're not making a cup. You're not putting that kind of time in. Put time into the making of the cup. You're putting time into the making of the series of effects and how they relate to each other. So if you can follow that a little bit, you're in this game a little bit. Now, something like that appears to have been going on in Degas' mind as well. Why shouldn't it? And then again, these portraits that show up later. This is all just direct painting. This isn't outlines that are all fixed up. This is done with a brush. And here again, you could see Sargent, you could see anybody in the Boston School this way. One of the beauties of this stuff is what it would totally appeal to him is taking a dark like this and getting it lost into these shapes and turning a far more interesting shape out of a simple board. And the same thing with this here, or the finger coming down and turning into this. This is classic sort of opportunity that you see when you're in that visual world, the world of lost and found, the world of value units instead of object units. So here he is. Here's this guy. This is the Degas that I'm calling the painterly painter when you don't really think of him that way. And what was I going to show you here? Okay, so there's a simple, here's another section that's very similar. I don't remember what I was showing you this one for, but this section here, I wanted to just have you take a close look at this. This is raw Impressionism. He just blobs paint on. He isn't drawing it. He's blobbing paint on and articulating just the way we do, just the way the Boston School does at key places. But that's just a blob of paint, this blob, 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 right? And it's just a hunk of texture. And the handling of this is strictly visual order, painted by effect rather than painted by object. Again, you can look closely at Ang's and you won't find that treatment. So Degas, it's very interesting here because it feels like he's halfway between two worlds, doesn't it? It feels like he's a classical painter there, and down, say, here, he's all the way down into here. He's a whole different guy. This is the visual. He's the for example, Velasquez, Move 2 and that this is the actual eye. The guy has such a great memory. He's got a great eye, and it's been trained. His memory's been trained, so this isn't a surprise. Then we have Tarbell here, and side by side with the rehearsal by Degas. But this doesn't look like Impressionist painting, except for certain drawing in certain places. It has a little bit of a cutout look, but you're finding visual order all over the place. You're finding wet into wet, big masses established as just form, and with just key bits of drawing showing up where you need it. Classic Boston school thinking, right from the beginning. This head is a marvel of that sort of thinking. I just give you this Tarbell to give you a picture of something where the figures are in the distance and form a small part of the painting. But if you look at them closely, you'll see the organization around effects that's so similar in each way of working. And this is what I'm saying about the guy. He's impressive because he's making these pictures up. He's gluing them together. You don't go around drawing. Normally, you don't go around drawing doors in pencil unless you don't have a wall and doors to do it on. And but it does appear as so many times he got bored and walked away from this thing. But I think and I also just wanted to mention Sargent and the idea of the liquidy paint. You know, sometimes he doesn't look like he's really flowing the paint. Sometimes the Boston School guys are really crumbly with it. But I just wanted to get Sargent into that discussion as well, because certainly a guy like Sargent, who was 20 years younger than him, was making a splash that he saw plainly. He was aware of everything. And there's numerous aspects of this thing that are strictly of that ilk, right? It's wet painting, wet into wet painting, a fairly fluid, a serious fluidity of the paint, and of course painted by the effects. So I just wanted to share that with you. Okay, that's the tease. I think I am going to probably do a 45-minute presentation at some point and go into this more deeply. There's so much more to explore with Degas. As Gemmell said, he's always interesting. All right, Mr. Producer, just for you, I'm hoping this is short enough. And you're saying just shut up and just finish it off. Okay, thank you all for your subscriptions, for your sharing, for your contributing, and anything else you do. Keep the comments coming, and we'll see you in the next one. And Mr. Producer.